Hi everyone, in today's session we will be discussing on the sexual reproduction of Oedogonium. Sexual reproduction in Oedogonium takes place with the help of the sex organs Oogonium and Antheridium. Oogonium being the female sex organ and Antheridium being the male sex organ. And this sexual reproduction usually takes place when they are inhabiting a water body which is quiet. So it happens when only in the quiet waters, and when the external pH will be high and the water will be deficient in nitrogen. So all these conditions favor the sexual reproduction in Oedogonium. And also it is a little bit complicated. Here in Oedogonium, based on the distribution of sex organs, actually it is grouped into two main categories. First is macrandrous species and the second one is called nanandrous. First, let's take the case in macrandrous species. Macrandrous species, it can be either monoecious or dioecious, while the other one, nanandrous species, nanandrous is always dioecious. So macrandrous species may be monoecious or dioecious, while nanandrous is always dioecious. This macrandrous species, here the male and female filaments are morphologically similar. Okay, so let us discuss about the sex organs in macrandrous species first. The cap cells, first let us see about the antheridial formation. The cap cells any of the cap cells will behave as a antheridial mother cell, and it divide into two unequal cells. Each of the mother cell, it divides into two unequal cells. The smaller cell becomes the antheridial cell and the larger cell will become the sister cell. This sister cell will again undergo the division same manner, unequal division, and form an antheridial cell, which will be the upper cell, and the lower cell will become the sister cell. This process again continues until a row of antheridial cells is formed, and then the protoplast of each of these antheridial cell will transform to two spermatozoids. That is, the protoplast of each antheridial cell will divide either transversely or vertically to form two daughter cells, and each of the protoplasm of these daughter cells will transform to anthrozoid, or we call it as spermatozoid. So that is about antheridial formation and anthrozoid formation. You can see here a row of antheridium. Each of these antheridium cell is containing two anthrozoids, you can see. So that is about antheridium. So you can see the liberation of anthrozoids from the antheridium. Each of the anthrozoid is a small spherical body which will be resembling the same as the zoospores, with a crown of flagella at their anterior end. It may be colorless, or it may be pale or yellow in color, and as soon as they are liberated, they swim freely in water until they reach the oogonium. And regarding the oogonium, oogonium of macrandrous forms may be it may be terminally situated or may be intercalary. And here also a cap cell will act as a oogonial mother cell. The oogonial mother cell, it will divide transversely to form an upper cap cell and a lower basal cell. The cap cell will be rich in cytoplasm and it will accumulate so much of the reserve food materials and it differentiate into an oogonium. While the basal cell, it becomes the supporting cell. We can either call it as suffultory cell also. So, the mother cell divides to form upper cell and a lower cell. Upper cell is called cap cell. Cap cell transforms, the protoplasm of the cap cell transforms to oogonium, while the lower cell, it will become the supporting cell. Mature oogonium is a large spherical cell and it bears one or more caps at its anterior end. The color will be green because of the presence of chloroplast, and it will be having tremendous amount of reserve food materials. Coming to the sex organs in the second type, that is the nanandrous species. The sexual process here is a little bit complicated. Here actually it may be again of two types. That is, the species which produce androsporangia and oogonium in the same filament are called gynandrosporous, while those which produce them in separate filaments are called ediandrosporous. So here under the nanandrous species, there also it can be of two types, gynandrosporous and ediandrosporous. Here the sexual process begins with the formation of androsporangia. Androsporangia are the structure which produce androspores, and these androspores are liberated into water and it swims to the oogonium and germinate there to form a dwarf male filament, or we call it as nanandrium. So here the androspore swims and it comes close to the oogonium and it germinates to produce a nanandrium or dwarf male filament. This nanandrium bears the antheridium, and inside the antheridium they produce anthrozooids, and the sexual fusion occurs between the egg and the anthrozooid. This is the oogonium in nanandrous species, and the oogonium, you can see below, this is the supporting cell and upper cell is the oogonial cell. We have discussed about the oogonial formation. Oogonium is formed from a cap cell. Cap cell acts as the mother cell. It divides transversely to form an upper cell and a lower cell. Upper cell transforms to oogonium and the lower cell forms the supporting cell. And androspores are formed inside androsporangium. That androsporangium may be in the same filament or it may be on the other filament, and based on that we have named it under two names, gynandrosporous and ediandrosporous. In either way, the androsporangium produces androspores, and that androspores are liberated out. It will swim and come to the surroundings of this oogonium, and it will germinate either on the oogonium, on the wall of oogonium, or it will be germinating on the supporting cell, and it germinates to form a dwarf male filament or the nanandrium. You can see the nanandrium has a basal cell which resembles the holdfast like basal cell, and at the terminal portion it has one or two small cells, and that small cells will act as antheridial mother cell, and that antheridial mother cells will divide to form anthrozooids, and thus anthrozooids are formed on this nanandrium or the dwarf filament, and they after maturing or after metamorphosis they are liberated out and they come to fuse with this oogonium. In this way zygotes are formed, and zygote is liberated by the decay of this oogonial wall, and this zygote, it sinks in the bottom of the pond. It may undergo a period of rest or it may divide immediately. The diploid nucleus of this zygote divides by meiosis before germination, and 4 haploid cells are formed. These migrate into a mucilaginous vesicles and differentiate into multiflagellate mesospores. The number which will survive may vary, either 1 or 2 or 3 may degenerate. Then lesser number of zoospores are produced. The zoospores are liberated by the disintegration of the vesicle. They swim in water and germinate to produce vegetative filaments in the same manner as that of the zoospores through the asexual reproduction. So this is about the life cycle. So simple. There are actually, to brief, there are actually two types or two major groups of Oedogonium based on the distribution of sex organs, nanandrous and macrandrous. Macrandrous species, they may be dioecious or monoecious, while nanandrous species are always dioecious. And nanandrous species are again of two types, gynandrosporous. Here the oogonium and androsporangium are born on the same filament, and ediandrosporous, where oogonium and androsporangium are born on separate filaments. And coming to the sex organs or the development of sex organs in macrandrous species, mother cell, which is the cap cell, divides to form two cells, upper and lower cell. Upper cell antheridial cell, lower cell sister cell. Sister cell again divides to form upper antheridial and lower sister. This process continues until a row of antheridial cell is formed. The protoplast of each antheridial cell divides to form two daughter cells, and each of them transforms to form anthrozoids. That is all about antheridium. And next is oogonium formation. In oogonium also a cap cell will be acting as a mother cell. It divides to form two cells, upper and lower cell. The cap cell will be forming the oogonium, and the lower basal cell will be the supporting cell. And the protoplast of the oogonium completely transforms to egg. And next is the case of nanandrous species. In nanandrous species, before antheridium formation, there is a special organ or an extra feature, that is the formation of androsporangium. This androsporangium produces androspores, and androspores are liberated out. They swim through water and reach the surroundings of oogonium. They either germinate on the oogonial wall or they germinate on the supporting cell, which is below the oogonium, and they germinate to form a nanandrium or dwarf filament. It is having a basal cell and a terminal small cells. The small cells, terminal cells, it will act as antheridium, and inside them anthrozoid formation occurs. It is liberated out and fuses with the egg. In both way, either nanandrous or macrandrous, the antheridium is ruptured and the anthrozoids are liberated out. They swim through water and they come in acquaintance with the egg. Fertilization occurs. After fertilization, this diploid zygote, it sinks underwater. It may undergo a resting period, and then what happens, it divides meiotically to form 4 haploid nucleus, and 1 or 2 or 3 may degenerate and only 1 may survive. And then what happens, they are surrounded by a mucilaginous sheath, and they form their own walls also. These zoospores, after disintegrating this vesicles, they germinate to form vegetative filament. So this is all about sexual reproduction in Oedogonium.